What we know is the things in life that challenge us the most, we have the most to learn from. And the people in life that challenge us the most, we have the most to learn about ourselves from. And so is there an opportunity in crisis? So my name is Ian Pitchford, and I'm just going to share a few thoughts with you over the next couple of minutes about this idea of crisis. My background is a military one, like a number of other people that I've heard speak and spoken to today. So one of the things that is quite interesting when you come from a military background is you spend a lot of time in crisis, either creating it, which is kind of one of the things that we do sometimes in a military environment, or actually going to be able to respond to it. And so I'm often left with being able to explore the beautiful lessons that come out of that. And I'm going to start really with a little bit of an idea that sits very much true to my own personal heart. And this idea of being a fish out of water. And very often that's what crisis feels like for most of us. And so there's an old Zen proverb, and there's two little fish, and they're swimming around a really big pond. And one morning as they swim and as they're swimming around the pond, then there's a big old fish coming the other way. And the big old fish, as it passes the two little fish, just nods politely and says, "How's the water this morning?" And the two little fish look at each other and they just kind of look and turn and nod and giggle. And actually, like young people often do when we haven't experienced something that someone else has done. So they carry on. And the big old fish just sort of nods and smiles and carries on going. And then the two little fish look at each other a little, just when they think the big fish is out of earshot. And they go, "What's water?" Because, of course, unless you've been a fish out of water, you don't necessarily know the importance of it. So crisis can be one of those beautifully fabulous things. The example, the global pandemic, the crisis now, it causes us to be a fish out of water. For most of us, we don't necessarily have a comfort zone, although we use that phrase loads and loads and loads. What we have is a place that's familiar. And quite often, there's a place of pain in that. For lots of people, there's an uncomfortableness. And what we do is we slowly migrate change if we want to. And change for most of us, as most of us on here are involved in change for people in some way, shape or form. It's not very often, real change doesn't occur, not very often about what we learn and what we know. It's about the wisdom to let go of something. It's about the wisdom to be able to want to shift a paradigm, to be able to let go of an old model of the world. And so crisis gives us the ability to do that. And this crisis has, because for so many people in so many places, then we've suddenly got the ability to directly compare two models of the world, two versions of how the world exists and how we are in it. And the only thing that hasn't actually necessarily changed, certainly in the early days of that crisis, was us. And so what we're starting to see now is to be able to pay real attention, because everything in the extreme to the left and right of arc for us are where our model of the world is really tested. And so for most people right now, their model of the world is really tested, is being really tested. So for those of you who are in a leadership role, for those of you who are supporting and developing and growing organizations, actually what we're starting to see quite quickly, which is compounding this sense of crisis for them, but what means there's a beautiful learning opportunity that sits in that, is some of the things that they'd kidded themselves, the fabric of the nature of their leadership structures, the fact they thought they were in control, and that having people attended a space and a place meant that somehow they were able to performance manage them. Well, actually, what you're starting to see now is that clearly that was never the case, because the cracks have really opened up. They've really started to be able to fall apart in organizations. And so what we've got in that sense of crisis always is the ability to beautifully reflect on what was. It's whether we're open to be able to reflect and think about what was. Just because it seemed to work, did it actually? Or was I somehow living in this place and space where there was a level of cognitive dissonance around just the beliefs that I fed myself around making and feeling as though it worked? Crisis has energy about it. And for those of you that have studied other languages, that have got a spiritual connection on your journey, then what you'll actually know is maybe crisis is one of those words that you've explored. And certainly crisis in Chinese, when we write the symbols for crisis, then one is danger. One is danger, but the other symbol is opportunity. And so it's a very Western idea that actually crisis is one of those places that we're in when we are a fish out of water, when the model of the world that we've got, we can't currently use to be able to explore, explain, and understand what is going on for us. So what it means then is that anxiety levels are risen, those negative emotions that people feel, and those emotions are just simply feedback. What they're doing is letting us know that actually currently right now, our thinking, our model of the world, the application that we're using to be able to try and understand what's going on for us simply isn't working. So as Neil mentioned right at the start of the day, is picking up and smashing your vase a really big deal? Well, it is only if the vase is important. But of course, if the vase isn't important, then just get rid of it. And more importantly, if you do end up feeling that you need to create something from it, is that if we borrow a little bit of the idea from Japanese, the idea of kintsugai, which is to repair things. And as we repair them and make a new form, as we glue them together, they glue them together with gold and gold leaf. And actually very often the beauty that is created, whilst it may be made from the component parts of what was before, is now incredibly powerful. Very often it's more beautiful. And it is the cracks and the scars. It is our lessons that we've learned in life from those moments in crisis where we get to tap into the fact that we know that we have become incredibly confident and that we've survived this. And so that we can move on and move forward. So is there something really to draw from crisis? You might not like it. It might not necessarily make you feel as though you're, on top of your game at any point in time. But actually, it is just a game. It's a puzzle that needs to be unraveled. And so the final thought that I will leave you with is that, remember right now, is that you have survived 100% of your toughest days. And so allow yourself to draw some confidence from that.